If I asked you to choose a number between 1 and 9, do you think that I could correctly guess what that number is? It's not a trick, trust me. For this to work, I need you to imagine that you see me now on a stage, and that I single you out from the audience. I invite you to come forward and join me. Then, I ask you to clear your mind and to choose a number, any number between 1 and 9. Remember that this is a single digit and that this is a special number, unlike all the others. Do you have it? Keep thinking about it, and let's see if I'm able to guess your choice correctly. The number of the day.
It's time to get up and stomp your feet.
7 is a popular choice when people are asked to pick a number. It's for this reason that it's called the world's favorite number. This has been established time and time again in experiments, a typical example being one conducted by Yale University students in the 1960s, when 558 people were stopped on the campus and asked to give the first number that came to mind between 0 and 9. The majority of them, 28.4% to be precise, picked a number 7. The authors of this Yale study, Kubovi and Sotska, proposed that test subjects were, perhaps subconsciously, eliminating rather than choosing numbers. You'd never say 1 or 9 because as endpoints they suggest a lack of creativity. You don't say 5 because it's right in the middle, and again feels too obvious. 2, 4, 6 and 8 all feel a bit too ordered, so they're eliminated. We all want to appear to be individuals, so we choose the number that we consider to be the outsider, the odd one out, ergo number 7. Being the odd one out is part of the key to understanding 7, and it's more than just about seeing it as the rebel, as there are more notable singularities to it. Of the single digits, it's the only one to consist of 2 syllables in many languages. 7 is also the only number amongst those we can count on our hands that cannot be divided or multiplied within the group. 9 can be divided by 3, as can 6, and 5 can be multiplied by 2, but 7 just doesn't work with any. Culturally, it's this idea of 7 being the outsider that may have contributed to Akira Kurosawa's classic film Seven Samurai, or its Americanized version, The Magnificent Seven. Its story tells the tale of 7 outsiders hired by a village to challenge bandits who were extorting them. The 7 dwarves, made famous in the Grimm Brothers story and by Disney, could also be considered outsiders, although it could be argued that the reason why their numbers equal 7 has more to do with the limit of memory. In another psychology study, this one conducted a decade earlier in 1956, cognitive psychologist George A. Miller of Harvard University's Department of Psychology published a paper titled The Magical Number 7, Plus or Minus 2, in which he argued that 7 was the approximate short-term memory limit of our capacity for processing chunks of information. 7 names being one of those. Following the same train of thought, you could also include the numerous other groupings that we've conjured up in order to make use of this brain-limiting factor. Just think, 7 deadly sins, or 7 wonders of the world. And Jehovah said,
"The Lord Jehovah has given unto you these 15, 10 commandments for all to obey."
7 plays a huge role in most belief systems around the world, but don't take my word for it, take the word of God. The number 7 appears in the Bible more than any other number. In fact, the first sentence of the Hebrew version of the Old Testament, the Torah, is composed of 7 words. Sure, you might be thinking that this is just a coincidence, but you'll soon change that opinion. Let's take a closer look at that sentence. And for those Hebrew speakers out there, I beg your forgiveness in advance for the butchered pronunciation that I'm about to perform. Bereshit bara Elohim et hashemayim ve'et haaretz, which translates as, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. So let's focus on the word et. It's the central word. There are 3 words before and 3 that follow. Now et is composed of the letters e or alf, the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet, and t or tav, which is the last letter of the alphabet, therefore the beginning and the end. Does it all still seem like a coincidence? The number is again referenced in a menorah, which holds 7 candles. 6 represent the branches of human knowledge, which lean inward, and guided by the 5th, which represents the light of God. The menorah also commemorates the world having been shares similarities with the triple lotus lamp as seen in this example from Tutankhamun's tomb, and the cemetery symbol which denotes the unification of Upper and Lower Egypt. The former brings light to the afterlife and the latter denotes wholeness, both of which are key to the symbolism of the menorah. 7 also appears frequently in Babylonian magical rituals. There are 7 walks between Al-Safa and Al-Marwa, performed by Muslim pilgrims during the Hajj and the Umrah. 7 worlds in the universe of Hindu cosmology. There were 7 steps taken by the Buddha at birth, and the Mesopotamian goddess Inanna, stories about whom can be traced back to 4000 BCE, is said to have traversed 7 gates in order to enter the underworld. Meanwhile in China, seven is considered a holy number or that of harmony. Confucianism considers 7 to be the union of yin, yang, and the 5 elements of earth, water, fire, wood, and metal, while in Mithraism there are 7 ranks or grades of initiation. And let's not forget many of these religions share a common belief in the highest level of spiritual attainment, which we call seventh heaven.
When I see their happy faces smiling back at me, seventh heaven.
If you look up into the sky at night, you'll see the wanderers, as the Greeks called them, the stellar objects that don't move like the others. The Romans named them Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn, which if you add the moon and sun, you'll count as 7. This is where the idea of seventh heaven comes from. And no, I'm not talking about the television series, but the idea embodied in many religions that there are 7 levels to heaven, an idea on the notion of there being celestial spheres, which was developed by Plato, Aristotle, Ptolemy, and ultimately Copernicus, who finally put everything in its correct place in his bestseller of 1543. Another cosmic connection that our ancestors made was to a group of stars that we call the Pleiades, or the Seven Sisters. You'll see them in the night sky just to the left of Orion in the constellation of Taurus, a star cluster which you should just be able to make out with the naked eye as being 6 stars. So, why are they known in cultures as distant as that of the Greeks to the Japanese and the Australian Aborigines as the Seven Sisters, 7 daughters, 7 maidens, or 7 little girls? The answer to this nobody really knows, which only adds to the mystery. Some have speculated that one of the now faint stars once appeared much brighter to our ancestors, while another theory has suggested that 2 stars which now appear as one were more easily distinguishable as separate in the past. Whatever the reason, this group of stars was incredibly important to us in a time before written language, when information was passed on from generation to generation through stories and myth. There are also a number of other scientific factors concerning 7 which should be explained. The first is that when we look at a rainbow, we perceive there to be 7 colors. This is purely down to how we perceive light, even though the human eye is capable of distinguishing between 1,000,000 of them. Our sense of hearing also explains why there are 7 notes in a major scale, although again, this is largely a Western concept, as traditional Chinese music uses a pentatonic or 5-note scale, while Indian music uses pitches which may sound out of tune to Western listeners. A final scientific point to add is that there were 7 metals known to antiquity: gold, silver, copper, tin, lead, iron, and mercury. This may have added to the alluring mystery at the time, a notion dispelled by modern science, which has now identified about 70 metals, not including hair, speed, or death metal. So, do you feel lucky? Walk into any casino and you'll be dazzled not just by the garish lighting designed to make you lose track of time, but also by the whole number crunching thing that's going on. Take a closer look around you, and what you'll see is that in various guises, one digit seems to turn up more often than any other. Yep, you guessed it, that'll be the number 7. This is happening because quite literally, the dice are stacked in its favor, and according to the laws of probability, the advantage in choosing 7 is that the total of the two dice throw will add up to 7 more often than any other number. This is why the payout odds for betting on 7 is less than the other numbers. Slot machines are another gambling icon to make use of 7's popularity and perceived link to luck. They didn't start out this way though, and in my research, the earliest example that I could find only dates back to 1946, and the number 77721 Bell slot machine produced by Mills Novelty in the US. Despite Lucky 7 turning up time and time again in casinos, there is, however, simply no evidence to suggest that 7 is any more lucky than other numbers. Just ask Taylor Swift.
This is my lucky number 13, and I put it on the door. My drummer put a 13 on his drum head. I was born on the 13th. I turned 13 on Friday the 13th. My first album went gold in 13 weeks. My first #1 song had a 13-second intro.
In fact, the whole idea of 7 being lucky is purely a Western concept. In China, it's the number 8 that is considered lucky. There was no coincidence that the Beijing Olympics began at exactly, wait for it, 8 minutes and 8 seconds past 8 p.m. on the 8th of August, the 8th month, in the year 2008. Sticking with the sporting theme, and if you're a fan of the English football team Manchester United, then you'll most likely be aware of the significance of a player wearing the number 7 jersey. David Beckham wore it with pride, as did Cristiano Ronaldo, Eric Cantona, and Brian Robson. But its significance doesn't have anything to do with luck. It's simply as an association to one of the greats of football, George Best, who wore the number during his time playing for United. But as is typical of sneaky number 7 always getting in there, George only wore the jersey for 141 of the 470 games that he played for Manchester United. In fact, he wore the number 11 more often, for over half the games that he played. So again, baseless luck-giving qualities are attributed to cheeky number 7. The faith of the 7. So is 7 really so lucky, mysterious, or magical? The cold hard answer to that question is no. It was common knowledge among parlor tricksters and to those performing mind-reading acts that one number does indeed get chosen more often than others, and that number is 7. I'd like to be able to say that 7 is just another number, no different to 4 or 9, but that's an argument I know that I simply won't win, for the fact that we continue to imbue it with magical qualities. You only have to look so far as a heptagram being used as the religious symbol of the people of Westeros in the television series Game of Thrones to understand what I'm talking about. But if I haven't convinced you as yet, then perhaps my final reference will. If you're familiar with the most recent retelling of Battlestar Galactica, the one starring Tricia Helfer at all, we know that in total, spoiler alert, I'm about to give away the central mystery of Battlestar Galactica, so if you haven't seen it and still want to, then you might want to stop here. Continuing on, we know that in total there were 13 Cylons, the 5 originals and the 8 that they created. Yet we were only introduced to 7. Number 2 is Leoben, 6 is, well, number 6 in various guises, 8 is Sharon, 3 is Deanna, 4 is Simon, 5 is Aaron, and number 1 is John. So where's number 7? We're told that 7 was a favourite of Ellen Ty, and that he, Daniel, was creative, sensitive, and an artist. The 7s were destroyed decades before the Second Cylon War by number 1, who was angry that Ellen was playing favourites. As such, there are no number 7s in Battlestar Galactica, so suck on that all you other numbers. And, in a tradition of adding to the magic of 7, one final point, and that is that in this video I've mentioned the number 7 77 times. It must be magic. Thank you, good night.
Ooh.